Good morning, robotics competitors. Once again, this is Sheldon Marquis, and we're on to the last video of the day, which is going to be things to watch out for on competition day. And I'll give you a quick outline of what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the competition schedule at provincials. We're also going to be talking about things to consider during the competition. And finally, we're going to be moving on to what to do if you move on to the national competition. And this year it's going to be happening in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and obviously if you're watching this in 2020 or further on, check your local skills competition details for more information on that. So first thing we're going to talk about is the schedule. So the way that the provincial competition works in Alberta is it happens on two separate days, which is May 8th to May 9th, 2019. And these dates are pretty set in stone, so I don't imagine them changing too much. I believe they're on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, so right in the middle of the week. But these dates, the robotics competition is actually going to be running on both of these days. And strictly speaking, May 8th is going to be round robin competition, and May 9th is going to be the tournament play. Obviously these, you could go into more detail in the scope to see what exactly each of these are, but I'll start describing that in a little bit here. So to break it down in more detail, I know a lot of robotics competitors come to the competition kind of intimidating because there's just so much going on. And to give you a little bit of a breather, I'll give you a little bit of information as to how the schedule during the day works. So, usually you'd have your robot ready by that day, and on May 8th, which I'll write over here, first thing we're going to be worrying about is at 8 a.m. I'm opening the doors. So opening competition. So what that basically means is that I'm going to be opening the floodgates for people to come in and set up on their tables and set their table down, or set their robot down onto the table, and they can start working on the robot. Now around 9 a.m., that's when we have a safety presentation. And this is where I'll just be going over like the exits, fire extinguisher use, like all sorts of different procedures that we're going to have to go over before we actually start running robots. So right after the safety presentations, we're also going to start doing robotic inspections, which I have here once I write it down. So what I have over here, you'll find this in your robotics scope that we have on the website. And this actually is the first thing that we're going to be doing really during the day, is going over to each team's robot and actually inspecting it. And if you watched my first and second video, we're actually going to be inspecting how your robot performs, how we could shut it off, the power rating of the robot, and seeing if the circuit diagram passes with flying colors. So if you go to video 2, I kind of describe how to make a proper circuit diagram. So I highly recommend watching that video. So once your robot passes inspection, you could start practicing with your robot on the court area. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the competition has started. It just means that we are allowing you to practice if you passed inspection. If you haven't passed inspection, obviously you have to go back to the drawing board and fix whatever's causing you to not pass inspection. Now, around 10:30 is when I'm going to start the competition. This obviously is a little bit flexible, but for the most part we try to stick to the schedule that 10:30 is the start of round robin. So in terms of that, what that basically means is that now I'm clearing the court area from any robots that have been practicing, and now I have a schedule that shows up on a screen that shows what team is going up against what other team. And those teams are designated either in the red corner or the blue corner. And so as soon as I start the competition, I want you guys, whatever team is up next, I want them to be ready to go onto the court area. And once they're ready, we can start the competition. Now, this year's competition runs in 4-minute intervals. So what that basically means is that the competition, so a round, is equal to 4 minutes. And then in between each round, every game is around 4 minutes. So the buzzer buzzes at 4 minutes, and then we have an intermission of 4 minutes. So following that schedule, usually we finish around the day at 3:30, and the way that the round robin is actually set up is that it's set up in such a way that every team is supposed to fight each other team at least once. But the way that the schedule works, it doesn't really work that way because there's 16 teams. So what we're gonna do is actually, when we go on to the next day, we finish off the last round so that every team has an equal amount of games played. And you could go into further detail inside the scope document where it's actually outlined. So once again, going back to the start of the round robin, we start at 10:30. So the way it breaks down is 10:30, a robot team starts competing. As soon as 10:34 rolls around, the robot team stops competing. And then from 10:34 to 10:38, we have intermission, allowing teams to get off the court and allowing for the next team to come on. Now, an important thing to remember is that we want the next team to be on as soon as possible. So as soon as that buzzer goes off that the last team finished the game, we want the next team upcoming to be waiting, to be ready to put the robot on the court. After the 10:30 round robin start, we're playing games throughout the day, and then as soon as we get to 12 o'clock, we have lunchtime. And that's an hour off, basically. And if you guys feel like you want to do it, you can stay as long as there's a committee member or a judge present to supervise, and you could stay and actually practice, provided that there's someone there to watch you. So I'd highly recommend getting lunch. Obviously, you want to stock up on supplies and eat because, you know, it's a long day, it's very stressful, so get your lunch, but if you think that you can do it, come right back and then start practicing as much as possible, because as soon as 1 o'clock starts, we're gonna have round robin starts again, basically. Oops. Round robin once again starts again, and then we run the round robin tournament schedule until around 4 o'clock. So like I was saying before, the round robin tournament setup is made in such a way that we allow for every team to have an equal number of games before we actually go on to the tournament play. If we end up ending during the first day in the middle of a round, we're going to finish them off on the next day, which I'll go into more detail. So that was the first day, so it's kind of a whirlwind. You come on at 8 a.m. and then you go non-stop basically until 4 o'clock, so it's very stressful. So I'll go into that in more detail too. But now we're on to the next day. Well, actually, moving on before that, from May 8th to May 9th, from 4 o'clock until 8 a.m. the next day, you are allowed to take your robot back home with you. Something that's very important to the Alberta competition that's not like any other competition like BC or Saskatchewan is that you can take your robot home with you to the hotel or wherever you're situated and actually work on the robot overnight if you choose to do this. This has saved a lot of robots in the past, so this is a rule that I really like and I want to keep going with in the Alberta competition. So let's move on to the next day, May 9th. So May 9th is going to start the same kind of thing where we're going to be starting at 8 a.m. sharp, so I'm opening the gates, and around 9 o'clock, if it happened yesterday that we stopped in the middle of a round, we're going to finish off yesterday's round. And then after that, what we're going to start doing is hopefully around 10 a.m. we're going to have a quick meeting to go over basically the gist of double elimination tournament. And I guess the double elimination tournament, it's outlined in the scope, but the gist of it is in the name, it's double elimination. So if you lose twice, you're out of the competition. And now the ranking in this tournament is based off of your round robin rankings after that last round is finished. So say you ended up as first place from round robin from the day before, that means you're going to be the first person up. And if you're last place, you're going to be also the first person up. Way it's worked, however, though, just because you're in first place in the round robin from day one does not necessarily mean you're going to win on day two. Robots malfunction all the time, or teams get their nerves just out of whack, or all sorts of number of things can cause teams to not be able to move on to the national competition. So don't think just because you're first place in the round robin competition that you're going to be first place on day two of the tournament play. But anyway, so once the quick meeting happens, we're going to start around 10:30 is our tournament. Tournament play. And a quick disclaimer as well too, these times are very approximate because there's a whole whack of factors that could cause the schedule to go out to lunch. So maybe the schedule will be a little earlier than what I've told you today, or maybe it's going to be later. There's no way of knowing until the actual days of competition start rolling around. So take this all with a grain of salt. So hopefully we'd start the tournament play around 10:30. And then once again, just like the day before, we have lunch. And then just like before, you could go in and go practice with your robot whenever you want, as long as there's the judge or referee or committee member present. And then around 1 p.m., we start again. And this keeps on going until we come up with a winner. So some years it's happened where you went all the way up until 6 p.m. until competition ended, and sometimes it ended around 2 p.m. So once again, take this all with a grain of salt. This is just to make sure that we have a general outline of a schedule. Now, speaking about that last little bit, so we're in a double elimination tournament. So basically a double elimination tournament, just like I talked about before, it means that if you're playing a round with against another team, if you lose against that team, you still have one more chance to go up against the person in the finals. Well, sorry, you have one more chance to lose because it's double elimination, not single elimination. So take that as an opportunity for you to fix up your robot or change whatever is in your robot that's making you lose, and fix it up, because there have been teams in the past that have lost once but then still managed to work their way up through the tournament to make it to the gold medal game and then move on to nationals. So just because you've lost once doesn't mean you've lost completely. So don't worry about losing once. Obviously if you lose twice, then you're eliminated from the competition. But for the most part, that is how the day's schedule is going to, or the 2-day schedule is going to be like. Speaking from experience, it's a very, very fast-paced competition, so I'd imagine that you should prepare for something like this. Making sure that your batteries are charged, that you have all the tools you need, and that whenever you have downtime, you're fixing up your robot. And that kind of transitions me nicely into things you've got to actually think about during the competition. Let me just write this down. So, I guess the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about is make use of the downtime. So, downtime. So, like I was describing previously, every 4 minutes there's either going to be an intermission or there's going to be game playing. So let's say you played the first game of the day and now you have downtime until the next game. Take advantage of that. Don't just sit around on your laptop or on your phone doing willy-nilly. Do as much as you can, fixing up your robot, charging your batteries, interfacing with other competitors. Make use of this time, because not only are you in a competition area, but this is another instance where you could actually network with other people to see what sort of solutions they have on their robot platforms. And you could also fix up problems on your robot. For the most part, on the day one competition, you're gonna know your schedule. I'll have a little TV screen that has an Excel sheet that shows approximately at what time each team is playing. Well, actually, it's not even gonna be like that. It's more so it's gonna just show the current team playing and then the next team showing up after that. So make sure you pay attention to that screen. But day one competition is a lot less stressful than day two because you actually know your schedule because I've given it to you. So use that to your advantage. As soon as you know that you're not going to be playing for 3 or 4 games, fix your robot, charge your batteries. Use that downtime to your own advantage. Don't just waste it, because I've seen a lot of students in the past dilly-daddle during the competition because they didn't fix something on their robot. And then when it comes down to crunch time in day two, something breaks on the robot that they could have easily fixed the day before that completely wipes them from the competition because they didn't prepare. So use that downtime. Another big thing that I wanted to expand on is charge your batteries. And I'll expand on this in a little bit. So, why am I talking about charge your batteries as if it's the most important thing? Well, it is 100% the most important thing, because right now I've had a few years where some student teams had to forfeit games because they didn't charge their batteries. Now, the solution to that is obviously charge your batteries whenever you can, or have extra batteries as well. Because charging your batteries, it's the power source of your robot. If you don't have a battery, you don't have a robot. So teams, like you said previously, teams have lost games, and some have even been eliminated from the tournament simply because they didn't charge their batteries. Some teams had the best running robot in the competition, but for some reason they decided to not charge their batteries, and when it came down to the gold medal game, the robot couldn't run because the batteries weren't charged, and they had to forfeit. So very, very important, charge your batteries. Another thing that I wanted to talk to you about is stress during competition. So I myself was a competitor a while back, and I do understand the sort of stresses that you guys are going through during competition day. It's probably been one of the most stressful situations in my life, and I'm sure it's going to be the same for you. My recommendation is to just take it slow. Take everything one step at a time, because these are 2 days of competition, and it's very fast-paced, and sometimes you feel like you're very, very overwhelmed. Just take a step back and think about what you're doing and what you need to accomplish next, because some kids get so stressed out that they have no time to think, and that they're so stressed that they can't even think properly or solve a solution. Like I said, take a step back, take a breath, just take a pause before you start trying to tackle the problem again, because this is a very stressful competition. It's very important to have some mental checks whenever you're competing, because if you could let stress run you to the ground and actually cause you to lose the competition, that's obviously something you don't want to do. So stress is something you got to watch out for during the competition. So next thing I want to talk about today for you is the Nationals competition. So this will be for 2019, it's going to be in Halifax, Nova Scotia. So, whatever team wins at the provincial competition in Alberta, you'll know pretty soon that you've won, because there is no other element to the competition besides the tournament and round robin play. So you'll move on to the Halifax Nationals competition, and basically what that means is you're going to be flying over there, the team of 2, and you're also going to be handed a Studica Skills kit. And what this kit basically has, it has a whole bunch of robotic parts for you to actually build a new robot for the national competition. Now, why do we need to know about this? Well, basically, at the Nationals competition, there's going to be an element called the autonomous competition. So, This autonomous competition is different from the provincials because you're going to be actually competing and doing this competition while you're also competing doing round robin and tournament play. So there's even more stress at the nationals. So between May 9th, the national competition is actually running from May 28th to 29th in Halifax. So you have about 3 weeks of working with this autonomous, the autonomous kit that we gave you, practicing, because you're going to want to be able to accomplish certain types of tasks. One of them could be line following, another one could be detect proximity sensing from a wall. There's a whole bunch of different things, and that's more details are in the provincial scope, but basically the gist of it is you as a team have to build a robot when you're given a task at the national competition. We don't know, nor does any team member know what that autonomous competition is going to be at nationals until you actually end up in Nova Scotia. So you won't know anything about it until you make it on the day of competition. So last year's competition, to give you an example, it was a line following robot that had to pick up a pipe and then place it inside of a pipe cradle. That was one of the 3 competitions they had to do. So you would have to take your kit, design a robot that would be able to follow along, find the line, pick up the pipe, and then put it into the cradle. And that may seem a little daunting to you, but the kit itself actually has some great documentation. So you're not completely out to lunch when it comes to understanding this kind of this kit, but it is still something that you're going to have to worry about. So for the next 3 weeks, once you've won provincials, you're going to have to work with this kit to make sure that it's able to do all the all the competitions that are outlined in the national scope. So that's something to consider. Besides that, competition is going to be happening on May 28th and 29th. You're going to be competing against, I think, around 10 of the 13 provinces or territories throughout Canada. So you'll be going up against probably PEI, New Brunswick, Saskatchewan, BC. So yeah, and that's if you make it over to the national competition. Yeah, so for the most part, I think that wraps up what sort of information I wanted to pass on to you guys. So if you have any questions or concerns, you can always email me at my email. That's also posted in the scope. It's smarquis@ualberta.ca. So thank you very much for watching these videos, and thanks for tuning in. See you guys at the competition.